Get ready for Netflix's gripping new medical drama, Pulse. Set in a cutting-edge Miami trauma center, third-year resident Dr. Danny Sims is unexpectedly thrust into a promotion when beloved chief resident Dr. Xander Phillips gets suspended. Then, with the emotional and physical stakes at their highest, a storm will push the hospital and its residents to their limits. Witness how life can change in a heartbeat when you're operating under pressure. Watch Pulse, only on Netflix.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner, by knockout, is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Hello everyone, hope you're well and had a good final normal FPL game week for a couple of weeks. It's the start of a pair of two double game weeks, usually the crowning glory of FPL. Perhaps this season a little bit muted as we truly, I should say, get amongst the thick of it when it comes to the business end of the campaign. Now, if we'd done this pod on Sunday night, I think the mood would have been pretty somber. But Captain Blanks aside, which were ubiquitous this week, Monday night's event seems to have really lightened things up, as maybe, just maybe, there's a bit of renewed optimism as we start the pod today. Maybe. Looking at Sam's face, it doesn't seem that likely. Anyway, as always, I guess you are a Saints fan. Joined by Sam. You're all right, mate. How you doing? Commiserations. Let's just hope you can get 3 more points, somehow.
Well, we just need 2 more. If we can get to 2 more, it's all
11.
okay.
Oh, yeah, it's 11, isn't it?
So we don't even need another win. But honestly, I don't really see it happening. Although, to be fair, we've still got Leicester to play, and they can't seem to put the ball in the back of the net at the moment. So fingers crossed. Although I still kind of think they'll beat us. Anyway, obviously, Southampton aside, I'm very well. Thank you, Tom. I hope any of you out there listening are as well, especially if you're watching live during the Arsenal Real Madrid game as well. Props to you. That's very good commitment. In the meantime, though, we are Who Got the Assist. On today's pod, we've, of course, got the double game week coming. So today we're going to start off with team updates like usual, but we're going to flip the script a little bit and focus on the Game Week 32 preview. Slightly away from our usual format. All of the component pieces will be familiar, but we're kind of flipping it on its head a little bit. No knee jerk in particular this week. Instead, we're focusing on chip usage, bench boost in 32 or 33, and of course, triple captain in both of those game weeks as well. For those of you it's relevant to. The die is cast for many of us, and I know it's cast for probably both of us as well. But for those of you who are debating your chip strategy or, of course, using Assistant Manager, we're trying to cover all the angles and trying to figure out the best courses of action in our individual, quite unique scenarios at this point in time. We're also, of course, going to be looking through best transfers and probably more likely best differentials for Game Week 32, mainly to figure out how to accommodate alongside the 6 Newcastle and Crystal Palace players. Who are those edge pieces that can help round out the 11 or, in a lot of cases, round out a full playing 15 on a bench boost? Assistant manager picks will be covered as always, or since Game Week 25 anyway. And bold claims will be making return. One of us has actually scored a point, Tom. Can you actually believe it? And best captains, in a word, probably beginning with I. Finishing off with our teams and how we're setting up ahead of Game Week 32. It is Tuesday, the 8th of April, and Game Week 31 is finally in the books after what was a pretty joyous Monday evening for both of us. Isn't that right, Tom?
Yeah, it was pretty good, wasn't it? So, how did we do? Samuel, you're first.
I'm going first. Yeah. 58 points for me. It was looking like yet another red arrow. 2 red arrows in a row after a wild card would not have been good form. So I'm very glad that Jacob Murphy and Livramento did the damage last night. Murphy having a brace after 15 odd minutes was quite incredible. I couldn't believe the audacity of Fabian Schär to hit that from behind the halfway line. And I was also very proud of Murphy running in and following up that chance with quite as much gusto as he did, considering most people would probably just watch that from the sidelines and just fantasize at it going in the net rather than actually chasing it up. He at least did chase it up and got his due rewards. So Murphy with 16, Livramento with 11, including a clean sheet and an assist alongside 2 bonus points. The only other 2 that returned were the next week's double game weekers, Munoz and Mateta. So I only had 4 returners, but that was enough for a green arrow for me, a healthy 100k green arrow as well, which is very, very much needed at the moment. Everyone else blanked in my team, including my captain, Isak, but Salah didn't do the damage either. So overall, a decent week. I left points on the bench in the form of Gvardiol, and I did move for Saliba, which is maybe my one regret, but the transfer did need to be made, and my team's in a healthier position this week because of it.
Nice one. Yep, always good to have a positive outcome after the negative one straight off the bat with the wild card. 64 for me. Difference really was that I didn't make the transfer and I played Gvardiol, left Gabriel on my bench, and this week he's already gone for Milenkovic, leaving the door open to either following suit with you for Saliba, maybe taking a punt on Ben White, or maybe even going for the double Arsenal attack with another midfielder. We'll need to see. I'll kind of make that decision kind of later on. Same returners plus Gvardiol. A bit of a disappointment continued with Foden. That's probably one of the dumbest sort of decisions I've made on wildcard. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think it was kind of keeping Clivert. So I think kind of last week I'd have got 2 points off the bench for Livramento, and then I did get Murphy off the bench last week, and this week I'd have got like 2 points off the bench with Sarr. So I'd have been 1 point better off basically if I'd not gone with Foden. So the player has got to be removed, which gives me space for the all exciting 1 week punt this week, I think, because that player, I don't know if it's a Villa player, we'll come on to it, will stay in the team and then they'll kind of play for 32, 33 as well. Or if it's a player that I buy for 1 week and then sell again, I'm open to that to take a hit in 33. Absolutely fine with that. But 2 free transfers, see how we do. 64, very good, up to 191k. So hopefully this is not the last time I stay in this area, because last time I got to here, I swiftly got 2 massive red arrows and up 100k again. So hopefully I can sustain my rank. There we go. So
you'd like to think that would be less likely this time that you get red arrows, given that chips are active.
Bench boost and free hit. Bench boost, decent chip, well, no chip 33, but a really decent looking 33 team on paper, and free hit 34 coming. You know that's 3 red arrows in a row, don't you?
We know what's happening.
Massive red arrows in a row. Massive. We know where that's going to go. Right. Anyway, so this week, as Sam said, slightly changing the preview format, just because we've got to preview these double game weeks. First thing is chip use, differentials and AM second up, and then bold games best captain, as they are. As Sam said, very exciting that we're actually off the mark after what seems like absolutely yonks of a bold claim coming through, but all that to come. First thing is the chip debate this time. So we know this won't apply to everyone, as Sam said. It's the curse of the content creator here, unfortunately, trying to help everyone, but maybe we'll help no one, but we'll do our very best. So there's the bench boost, and Sam's got triple captain still to play. Isn't one of the foolish people like me who frisked it away on Erling Haaland versus Southampton, who only got 1 goal. But 32 and 33 for bench boost is definitely kind of caused a bit of confusion, more confusion than I'd have thought, actually, out there in the meta right now. I don't know if this is going to apply to everyone. It doesn't apply to me because my die is completely cast, but for other people, it might not be. Injuries to the likes of Gabriel, as well as uncertainty to players like Foden and maybe Palmer as well, could see some people with the door open to pivot from one to the other. And some people may have indeed left the door open when they did wildcard recently, if you've wildcarded recently, which could mean that, you could go for either. So I suppose it's worth kind of just discussing which one may be for bench boost, and then I suppose which one's best for triple captaincy. Of course, if you're an assistant manager, we'll cover you off in just a bit in terms of differentials for this week, and also kind of talk about which assistant manager you may want to hop onto next, assuming you went for like a Frank or maybe even a Potter last week. So, Sam, for you, the die is as cast as it was. I think that you've got the door open to Ian more than me, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I've been debating it a little bit. I mean, ideally, I wildcarded with a view to bench boosting in game week 32. I intentionally brought in those sort of edge piece players that had a good fixture, a good home fixture in game week 32 with that in mind. But I always knew that in the back of my mind, at least, there was the opportunity to wait a week if I needed to. If injuries were to strike, if there was just a little bit too many moving pieces in game week 32 to make it work, I could push it back a week or potentially even look later on in the season if I absolutely had to, just because no matter how you play the bench boost at this point in time, there are only 4 doublers even in game week 33. So you can only have a maximum of 12 double game week players. That means only one player can actually be in your actual bench boost for a double game week. So if I play it in a single game week, I'm only losing a maximum of 1 fixture anyway. And I'm planning on playing it in a week where I can only have 4 single game weekers on my bench. Obviously, you would think Crystal Palace and Newcastle players are starting in most scenarios, if not all. So this week, game week 32, lots of good home fixtures. I had Nottingham Forest home to Everton covered with Milenkovic. I've got double Man City at home to Palace. Guardiola is currently sat on my bench at home to Palace. I've got 2 single Arsenal game weeks for Saliba and Raya against Brentford. And I've also got at home to Leicester, Verbruggen, which is a key component because, of course, keepers are not the easiest to accommodate on a bench boost because you're spending a little bit extra money. You don't want to make a transfer. So I was locking in for game week 32 with that in mind. And next week, I can't remember who it is, but it's certainly not a great fixture. Definitely an away fixture. It might be Brentford, actually. Not a guaranteed clean sheet there by any means for Brighton. So ideally, I want to play it this week. We do have some injuries to deal with, of course. My team has Clivert in it at the moment, who looks a doubt. I think Foden's probably, Palmer's probably okay. Gabriel, I've already sorted. So I'm just crossing my fingers that nothing really comes undone during the week.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think that, as I said, the die was pretty much cast. It's not so much the Crystal Palace and Newcastle players, albeit I think you would have had to have a plan if you're bench boosting in 33 for what you're going to do with those Newcastle players, because away against Aston Villa doesn't exactly scream bench boost territory. But yeah, I mean, I've got Guardiola on my bench. And I think it was sort of that defender pick, defender 5, perhaps. So I've got Dunk. Other people may have, I don't know, a Wan-Bissaka or something like that. And I've got Foden here. I was intending to bench boost with him potentially because he's got double in 33. Now I can't rely on his minutes, so I think I'm going to take someone there. And I've got Jose Sarr as my goalkeeper because I needed a 4.4. Couldn't quite get to bloody Verbruggen because I paid for Foden. So I kind of gambled that, hey, you know what, Spurs are going to be so interested in their fixture against Frankfurt that hopefully Wolves might keep a clean sheet in that one. So for me, I'm kind of stuck playing that bench boost in 32. I'm okay with it. I think I'll end up with Sarr at home to Spurs. I mean, it is what it is. Obviously, it would have been nice to have Verbruggen, but I couldn't afford it at the time. No one taking a -4 to get a better keeper. Dunk, I think that kind of oddly that dictates when I'm going to be playing my bench boost. Guardiola at home, I can't get him on the pitch at the moment. I'm going to be at 50-50 between him and Milenkovic. I feel that Milenkovic, Forest versus Everton is one of those games we're going to have as a dyed in the wool 0-0. And then, Foden can just go out for a player who has a good single, I think. So, bench boosting single game week players for the first time in what I can't remember the last time I actually did this. My expectation actually is not the kind of your usual 16. I think it's kind of 10. If I get into double digits with the bench boost, I'm pretty happy, which is not kind of a ringing endorsement, but I think that is kind of just what it is. And if we're kind of saying that, hey, we want 8 points, so I kind of want 10 because the fixtures are good enough. But there are certain kind of pros and cons, I suppose, of both. I think the big pro of 32, and it's something that we both sort of discussed a couple of weeks ago when we were hastened into action to pick this bench boost, was that the 33 games, there's so much uncertainty, so much contextual uncertainty surrounding the teams who are doubling just because of the FA Cup coming up, that kind of put me off a little bit when it came to teams like Villa, like City, like Crystal Palace. It kind of worried me about in terms of what sort of minutes you were going to get from certain players. I mean, there are some obviously who you are going to be looking at and thinking, yeah, okay, they're pretty likely to be playing like a Marmoush or a Guardiola, could be famous last words. But others, the edge pieces, none of them particularly suited what I was looking at. West Ham versus Southampton was probably kind of the analogue for Brighton versus Leicester or something like that. So I think both are completely viable. It's just 33, I felt, had a little bit more kind of a bit more of a hint of uncertainty about it than 32, which is again going to be famous last words. When Dunk doesn't play, you see Cash in. Gvardiol doesn't play because Kuzanov and Nico O'Reilly are the left-sided centre-back and left-back respectively. All these things could happen, and it's the uncertainty around that. But it just kind of felt to me, Sam, that the 32 made a bit more sense. But if you're wildcarding this week, it is kind of a bit of a different story, and you've got to kind of just, I guess, ride that wave into 33, because the big pro of next week, Sam, is that there's more games, aren't there?
Yeah, of course. So next week on a bench boost, obviously there are some doubts with a lot of the double game weekers because they've got the FA Cup afterwards, but you wouldn't expect 0 minutes for many of the important options. So you referenced a Marmoush or a Gvardiol. They're not going to get 0 minutes across the double, and we're all going to be, even not on a bench boost, you would have them in your starting 11. So the benefit won't come from those players. We're all kind of in the same camp there. It will be based on those edge pieces, the ones that you would otherwise have on your bench, more often than not, the single game weekers. And I think it takes a lot of correct setting up to optimize for either one of the 2 weeks. A lot of the teams with a good fixture in 32 don't have a great fixture in game week 33, and vice versa. So West Ham being a great example there, Brighton being the inverse example, as you mentioned. And even teams like Liverpool or Chelsea as well might be debatable options. I think Liverpool might be the exception if it weren't for any question marks over those expected price points at the back. So
Yeah,
Konate, Bradley coming back from an injury, you would think now is probably okay, but on a wild card was tough to include because we just didn't know, and we also didn't know how far Trent was from coming back. So yeah, some of us will be already set up for one of the 2 game weeks. I think it depends how heavily you want to prioritize bench boost ahead of another chip. So if you've got a triple captaincy, I think Isak is the better option over the next 2 game weeks than Saka, marginally, but I think he probably is just about. But is he so far beyond that of Saka that it makes sense to therefore delay the bench boost into a week where you might not be quite as well set up? And in my example, I would have triple Newcastle at the moment. So as a lot of us, Murphy, Livramento, Isak, obviously other Newcastle assets apply. Are you happy to bench boost into double or triple against Aston Villa away from home just so you can get triple captain on Isak this week? For me, it's probably a no. But for others, they might think, you know what, Villa tired after Champions League double against PSG. Yeah, they could get something there. So it's not a crazy scenario to want to make the switch and just take a chance on some tired legs and hopefully take advantage there.
Isn't the entire Premier League playing with tired legs at this point?
Yeah, that's true.
By some of the games that are going on. But yeah, no, absolutely correct. And I think that it really feels like, just to make a bit of a wider point, that back in the day, Sam, when we were young, i.e. last year and further back, that you were sat there thinking, hell yeah, I'm going to get 26, 28 players this week. Woo, rubbing my hands together. And this time round, it does feel like there's going to be a lot of onus on those single game week players and getting that selection right, and just hoping that on the 1 week shootout on the day that fortune shines upon you effectively. But yeah, I think that in terms of the triple captain, whether that sort of turns your heads to one or the other, I do think you're probably right in that Isak on paper is the best triple captain option. A lot of it is contextual. A lot of it is just kind of down to your personal situation, as it does seem to have been this year a lot more with the 5 free transfers being able to be rolled. So with us, we're both kind of we're both going to be transferred out by the end of this, by the end of this week, that is. So we're back on 1 free transfer next week. But if you kind of come into this with 4 free transfers and you've got maximum flexibility to move things around, then hey, you know what? You can have your triple Newcastle this week, and you can. I assume you'd keep Isaac for your bench boost in 33. I don't think there's any kind of reason to sell him on, especially if you don't have your bench. If you don't have your free hit as well, then he's nailed on for 34. Indeed, there's an argument to keep maybe your, as Sam was saying, just bet on tired legs for Villa. There's probably an argument to keep one of your other Newcastle assets as well, if you haven't got your free hit, because they've got that Ipswich game in 34. But you can move one on and then kind of slightly rejig, get your triple captain out this week, and then do everything, I suppose, next week. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that, and you've got your triple captain left, whereas I don't. So it's easy for me to say, but I just don't think the triple captain does really change my entire thinking here. In kind of just. Well, the initial thinking was done a couple of weeks ago, but it doesn't kind of change. It wouldn't change kind of how I'd have approached this, where I'd be thinking, yeah, you know what? I think that 32 is the best week where I'm going to have that. But I'm going to have a slight bit more trust in the reliability of my players actually coming off the bench. But it may be too late for some people. And I think that in terms of being able to bench boost this week, especially if you're live with your wild card this week, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just that you've got to go into 33 bench boost with your eyes wide open, I suppose, in that regard. And I don't know, Sam, later on in the season, if you're not going for either of these two, because I think people are well aware of kind of what the two are, is it that 36? Is it 36 or 37, which could transpire?
36.
I mean, yeah, you're a lot closer to kind of what the configurations look like than me. I believe it's Villa, Bournemouth, City again, and Spurs who could double, but that's kind of reliant on so many things, isn't it? But I mean, that could be another angle where you could potentially bench boost later on, isn't it?
Yeah, so the key cog, I suppose, in this puzzle at the moment is a West Ham press post that they put out a week or so ago that gives us a little clue as to what the Premier League and the fixture schedulers might be planning after the FA Cup semi-finals. So they put out something that basically said, in the event that their opponents, I think they're playing Villa, I can't remember which one, but in the event that our opponents in game week 37 get through to the FA Cup final, our fixture would likely be brought forward to the midweek before game week 37, i.e. 36. So we can kind of start gleaming little hints from that yes, if a team gets through to the FA Cup final, it's quite likely that they would be brought forward their fixture from game week 37 to 36, giving them the double game week. Now, obviously, no guarantees on that so far at the moment, but given the fact that it was put out in the public domain by West Ham, it seems relatively likely that could happen. So the odds of double game weeks occurring at game week by the time we get to game week 36 are relatively likely at this point in time. We just don't know who it will be for. Obviously, we've got 2 pretty tough to call FA Cup semi-finals to come. Nottingham Forest versus Man City. I think Nottingham Forest have. Oh, sorry, they're both at Wembley, but either team could win that, and the same goes for Aston Villa Crystal Palace. Either team could get through in either leg, so it's quite hard to set up for a bench boost in game week 36, or even set up a team optimized for the double game weeks at this point in time, because we just quite frankly don't know which way we're going to be aiming by the time we get there. I think we just have to hope that the teams that we're more heavily invested in come the time we get that information, it will kind of favor us to get to game week 36 without needing too many free transfers, and also maybe even favor something like a bench boost or a triple captain should we get there with the chip in hand. At the moment, though, I wouldn't be relying on it because we just don't know which way it's going to go, and we don't even have the guarantee of a double game week either at this point in time.
Yeah, I suppose if you're an assistant manager though, and you've still got your bench boost in the back pocket, you're going to have to just hope things fall your way. But you knew what you were signing up for, didn't you? I suppose, and take nothing away from it. Assistant manager is such a powerful chip that at the end of the day, you're more than able to take on the bench boosters and the triple captains if they've still got that to play kind of later on. And I suppose if triple captain does fall by the wayside. So I don't really fancy kind of playing it. There are those kind of options later on in the year, just about with the likes of I guess Marmouche now in 35 against Wolves, Chris Wood against Leicester in 36. I've got written down here. Boomo in 36 against Ipswich. Yeah. There are a few options out there, and maybe you would have that. I suppose Southampton Bournemouth double if that came to pass in 36. So you've got there are going to be a few options to do it. I'm going to love it.
Game week 38 Southampton, that right winger.
Yeah,
they're getting points against Southampton every single week. I'm just saying, if you still got it, that's fine.
Yeah, and but look at game week 37, triple captain Beto against Southampton, Sam, at home. Last game, it's the last game at Goodison, Sam. That one. True. Yeah. X narrative. But hey, I mean, there are kind of lots of possible options. But hey, going back to the top, I think that there's definitely pros and cons of each week not being particularly useful. I think that it's clear that I favoured 32. That's how I set up. Well, not everyone can do it, but it does feel like kind of this is the week to go. But my expectations from what I'm expecting from my bench have certainly been lowered. But I do think my 33 team does look pretty tasty, and because of the way I've played it, I don't have that kind of an amazing bench that week anyway. So there's gonna be no regrets about not bench boosting in that week. Hits for doubles in general. I think we'll talk about this and next week. At the moment, I think that kind of if you think about it from the analytics point of view, they will always take hits upon hits every double game week because you're buying in more value with 2 bites at the cherry. I think that I think it's, unless you kind of wildcard a long time ago and you knew you'd end up having to take hits here. For most of us, we probably won't need to take many. I think maybe one's okay. 2, if you really need to optimize, I think that's going to be more of the case next week. But this week, Sam, I think I wouldn't be too worried about taking a hit for a double. The only reason that's come to mind is I was having a chat with a couple of the guys in the office today because quite a few people where I work now play fantasy football. And they're like, I've only got 1 free transfer and I want to get a couple more players in. I'm like, well, just take a hit then. Like, what, really? Because a lot of people don't like taking hits if they're kind of not as into it as we are. But I was like, well, the reality is that you've got extra games. One of them didn't have a third Newcastle. So I was like, well, it's fine to buy Murphy. there's no problem selling. I can't remember who he had. I think he might have had Kulusevski. So there's no problem selling Kulusevski for Murphy for this week. That's absolutely fine. You just go ahead with it if you fancy it, Yeah, with Kulusevski for Wolves, right? But I was just like, Kulusevski could be rotated. Anyway, that's by the way. But I think that still holds true, doesn't it? Despite the fact that these doubles are a bit more underwhelming compared to the ones you used to have in the past.
Yeah, they are a little bit underwhelming, but I think the commonly held truth still does hold true that if you're getting rid of a single game week, or especially a non-optimal single game weeker for someone with a double game week, you expect to play both matches. The upside is there and it exists. It's something we've seen season on season. It doesn't always work, so there are obvious scenarios which occur, which obviously leave a bit of a bitter taste in our mouth, but generally speaking, taking a hit for someone that has a great double game week, or it looks likely to play both matches in a double game week, even if it's not the best, more often than not will pay off. I think because a lot of us have just wildcarded and a lot of us are fairly well set up for the week anyway, hits won't be flying to the same extent in game week 32 as they might have done in seasons gone past, or perhaps even in game week 33 this year. But that doesn't mean that in your unique individual situation, it's not worth it in your team. All you've got to focus on is not the crowd around you, not what everyone else is doing, but whether or not the player you're bringing in, you're genuinely expecting them to score more than 4 points ahead of whoever you're getting rid of. The example of Kulusevski to Murphy, I'd have no hesitation whatsoever. I'd expect Murphy to get 4 more points than Kulusevski, and also just be a generally better pick across the rest of the season as well, which always helps as well. So I guess that's a sort of a secondary factor. Like we're not just dealing with this 1 game week in isolation. The hit could also pay off across multiple game weeks as well. So yeah, players like Isak, players like Mateta, Munoz, even Murphy as well at this point, if you're taking a hit to get them and you're not getting rid of another double game weeker in the process, it's probably going to be fairly well advised this week. It's going to be a decent move, with the exception of maybe getting rid of like a Salah or a Palmer with great home fixtures this week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just kind of wonder. I'm still kind of hopeful and enthusiastic about the doubles for this year. But no, it can't be escaping longer term players' attention. They do feel a bit sort of like us going, oh yeah, let's get excited about some pretty average fixtures, and the days of Arsenal playing Norwich and I don't know, West Brom are over, aren't they? The West Brom always used to beat us. It kind of feels like. And I remember I saw a friend of the pod, FPL Gills, Dave, on the Blue Sky earlier on, saying that bench boost game week 1 might actually be more of an option, the James Planet sort of manoeuvre more than ever before going forward. This is like the extent, the zenith of the doubles. I know that there was a potential kind of situation where we had 4 doubles next week. But it doesn't feel like, Sam, we're going to have those days ever again where we had kind of 6 extra fixtures on top of a regular game week, does it? So it might be the case that as you said, with the Dyer's cast, we've kind of got a few issues already, and it's kind of sent a few of our plans. If we had a couple more injuries, we'd be kind of looking at -4s, -8s, and getting rid of that bench boost, as I am 974 said in the chat earlier on, does feel like something that might actually help your season more than hinder it, because you've got to set up for so long for it. Even if we wildcarded 2 weeks before our bench boost, and we've still got to make a couple of transfers, which is obviously outside of our control, but injuries always happen. So I don't know, could this be the portent for things to come, where maybe we look at it and think, you know what, but maybe bench boost could be used in game week 1, or earlier on in the season, or when we've got a decent enough bench, rather than waiting for the doubles. Is there more of an option there now than there ever was before for managers like us who are always going to be using it in the doubles as far as we can?
Yeah, I think certainly there is going to be more of an opportunity to use it, maybe more flexibly than ever before. Because again, if there is something like an assistant manager chip next year, it's any sort of other chip that benefits or has the benefit or extra benefit from being used in a double game week. And given that we know that double game weeks are a little bit more rare moving forwards because of the way they've shifted the FA Cup fixtures around a little bit, that means that there are very limited amounts of double game weeks that you can use a chip on. So things like a bench boost or a triple captain become maybe marginally less important to use in a double game week, because let's say a system manager comes back again, that is going to be clearly a very important chip to use in a double game week. Getting an extra fixture out of a manager has been hugely helpful this year and could be again in the future. So that also is a factor. I completely agree with everything you said, by the way, in terms of the amount of planning that it takes to create a good bench boost. Yeah. I also think that maybe there's an argument to say, whilst you could use it in game week 1, I probably am too much of a scaredy cat to do that, because there's always one player that you expect to be a lock. Maybe they've just come back from preseason, not quite fit enough. Maybe there's a little bit of a new broom through at a club, and a player who was otherwise locked into an 11 isn't all of a sudden playing in that first game. We saw it, I think, with Foden this season. Okay, we didn't expect him to be fully fit, but he certainly didn't start the season. I think Watkins had some problems to begin with, so on and so forth. So game week 1 is probably a little bit too brave for me, but you could wait a few weeks until you've got that certainty around who the starting players are, using a free transfer here, free transfer there, just to correct any mistakes you initially made, and just use it in a single game week in around about game week 5, 6, 7, 8, whenever it suits you with the fixtures. The only other thing that I'd add to this as well is that team value on a bench boost is important, and we get the best team value towards the second half of the season. So that might be my argument to still maybe waiting a little bit longer, maybe even after that first wild card, or after that second wild card, or maybe the week before the second wild card. So you don't need to worry about holding all of that value across your 15. You can kind of get rid of all of your bench options where you've just gained a little bit of money from, or spread the money across too thinly, and then just attack the back end of the season with a true 11, maybe the cheapest possible options on the bench. And because you've got the team value in the first place accrued through the first half of the season, you've still got a pretty beefy bench boost before you wildcard out of it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think it's one that completely kind of slipped me by just because of the context this year with no Haaland. and it's made life so much easier, hasn't it? I'm sorry, I've just seen Arsenal 3-0 up, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, a quick word on that. What on earth is happening?
I don't know. We're playing so well, according to a friend. I can just see my WhatsApp pinging in my my peripherals.
Do you want to go off and watch it? I'll just wrap.
Yeah, I'll see you later, mate. See you later.
Yeah.
No, it's good. It's good. I'm obviously very happy. I'll watch it later on. But apparently we've absolutely steamrolled them. But yeah, no. I think you are right. Just to go back to the point, and I think that in terms of that team value, most years we won't have a situation like this where we've just got so much money in the bank, after removing like that was almost why I went with Foden a couple of weeks ago. I've seen a lot of kind of criticism out there on socials, not of me personally, but just going for Foden, which makes a lot of sense. Like, he's not right all year, completely get that, completely understand that, but he had Leicester, right? And feasibly you were thinking, hey, you know what, he starts against Leicester, starts behind Marmoush because Haaland's out, and then off we go. And then you've got a decent 31, no K32, no Palace are City's bogey team, and then straight into a really good looking 33 of doubles. That made a lot of sense to me. Just because of a punt on the player, he's not in form, but what begets form? Fixtures. So it made sense, and I could fit him in, get to 0.0, and have this sort of absurdly maxed out team. The gamble being that Foden was a player that people would like want, but wouldn't be able to get to. So I'd be in a uniquely good position. Didn't work out. So now I've got loads of money. But most years we are scrabbling around thinking, hey, I need to get, I can't get, all the players that I want. This time I had to sacrifice a 4.5 keeper for 4.4. Other years I've had to look at, getting a 5.0 rank 4 or rank 5 player in my list of wanted players because I couldn't afford the 6.5 million midfielder I wanted. Like, it's a very unusual situation. Most of the time, it's a really astute point, Sam. You can't fit everybody in. So yeah, that bench boost does become a bit more powerful later on compared to at the start, when we couldn't possibly know who the kind of the Cole Palmer price at 5.0 of that year is going to be at the start of the year. And there's a lot more sort of luck involved, I guess. There's always luck involved, but you know exactly what I mean. Cool.
All right. That factor's turned up a bit, isn't it, in game week 1?
Yeah, you're right. Well, I mean, okay. Well, I mean, we'll come back next week and do this all over again, I suppose. Obviously won't be looking at 32 versus 33, but it kind of is. It's horses for courses, really. Merits to both. If you are deciding between the two, just bear in mind what I said about maybe 33 being slightly more iffy in terms of reliability of starts, and expect minutes perhaps going down. But you do lose fixtures this week, which kind of counteracts it. So yeah, very even Stevens in terms of how it sets out, and a lot of it depends on the decisions you've already made. So there we go. Right, on to differentials for the week ahead, replacing best transfers mostly, and assistant manager, of course. So how much are we considering 32 and 33 is my first question to you, Sam, in terms of the players you're looking to bring in this week. Like, some people I know are going to be free hitting next week, and that sort of very exotic strategy that none of us can quite figure out how to do. I think it kind of mostly fitted people who had wildcarded ages ago to free hit into 33 and have 32 and 34 as corresponding sort of sister game weeks, as it were, something that we kind of both thought about potentially doing a little while ago. But if you are looking at kind of a transfer in this week, Sam, and you're looking at a player who's good for 32 and is good for a bench boost potentially in 33, the options, apart from the Palace players, who I assume most people are going to be tripled on, aren't particularly high, especially because Villa would be the natural fit. But who the hell is going to be playing against Southampton?
Yeah, that is the $1 million question. I really hope that we get some answers tomorrow night after the PSG game, based around whoever starts that game. Maybe there's one or two options that we would be interested in that didn't start PSG's first leg and therefore might be more likely to play against Southampton. I mean, at the moment, it is anyone's guess. Rodgers is, or you would suppose so far, the most reliable for minutes, but Southampton, as I've been talking with Andy Martin on the Dark Place X over the last couple of days, he could be a doubt going into Southampton. There's a really busy fixture run for Villa coming, and it's not just the Champions League. It's also the fact that they've got some difficult Premier League games that they need to win if they want to maintain their Champions League charge to get back in the competition again next year. And they've got an FA Cup semi-final round the corner too. And the only easy game on the list is Southampton away from home. So possibly players even like Rodgers, as important and as reliable as he has been, could arguably be a doubt. Now, I think we will get more information tomorrow night. There will be one or two attacking players that we expect to start or would be in the mix who just quite frankly won't, because there are only 11 players that can play. I don't think Emery's going to go all guns blazing and put out as many attackers as he can against a very good PSG side. So my gut instinct right now is telling me, and again, feel free to clip this, it's probably going to be wrong. I think Rashford's going to be benched, personally. I think he's going to be a good option off the bench for them tomorrow night to try and drag the game out a little bit, to try and catch them on the counter with tired legs last 20 minutes. And I think the intention would be to give Watkins a rest against Southampton and play Rashford through the centre. That would be my guess as to where they're going to go with it. That could be completely wrong. Maybe it's Asensio that misses out, who, by the way, can play PSG. I've had a number of questions on that. He is allowed to play against PSG. It's not a parent club issue. It's absolutely fine. So Asensio might get benched. He might play. If he doesn't play, then he could be a great option with great data going into Southampton. Watkins, I think, is probably the least likely, given they probably want that centre forward to lead the line against them. But a player like Marlon, who you put on screen here, Tom, could be interesting, given that he isn't registered for European football for Villa. Is he someone that you might be looking at?
Yeah, I think so. Just by process of elimination, basically.
Yeah.
There's nothing else I can say about Marlon apart from the fact that I know him. I don't know him personally, but I know him from
good guy, Marlon.
Yeah, good guy. Me and Danielle go way back. I've known of him for a long time through Fantasy Bundesliga, and he is mercurial, to use one of Nick's favourite terms. One of those players who can look absolutely frightening in the first half and look absolutely terrible in the next. So last year, just for context, he was playing at Dortmund. He was 10th overall in the league for non-pen XGI per 90. So he does have pedigree. Was playing for Dortmund. He got over 1,000 minutes. I think he played like kind of 26, 27 games then, which is the majority is the 34 fixture season. So he is a very busy player, a player that I do quite like, and he one of those players who could be an Uber differential for this week, basically. Really fits that parameter of being a 1 week punt. Villa B versus Saints, Sam. I mean, are Saints going to be able to put up? Are they going to be galvanised, as I heard on the podcast earlier on today, which I will not name? Are they going to be galvanised by the fact that they've been relegated and start playing with freedom?
Who said they'd be galvanised? I don't think galvanised is a word that I could describe with Southampton this year, no matter what the fixture, or no matter what the circumstance. We are utterly horrendous, and you can clip that all you want. We've been so bad all season, it's actually laughable. I watched the full Spurs game, and the amount of times we just got carved open was quite laughable. So look, I mean, under new management, maybe it's a little bit different. Rusk is a decent young coach, or a decent new coach anyway, coming through the ranks, and we quite rate him, I think, as a club. So maybe he's able to get more of a tune out of us, but I doubt in the turnaround, considering the players' heads will be dropped at the moment. And Lallana will be on the coaching staff, by the way, so you might be able to assistant manager a player who is also an option in FPL as a player as well. So that could be interesting. So yeah, I mean, look, Villa A, Villa B, Villa C, it probably doesn't matter. They've got a great amount of depth in that squad that you could call it Villa B, and they're still realistically a top 10 Premier League side at this point in time. They've got a really good set of players across the whole squad depth now. So I wouldn't be worried about that whatsoever. It's all about whether or not you can pick the player who's actually going to get the minutes. And if you can, and especially if they're also then going to get the minutes in game week 33, then you've got yourself a winner. Because I think, at least in my scenario, maybe if you've got more free transfers or a little bit happier to take extra hits down the line, you could look at a player that is purely a 1 week punt, regardless of what you think their future minutes might look like. I do want a player that can serve me right this week if I'm picking a Villa player, but also get good minutes across the double in 33 because I will want to start them in my 11 next week as well. So that is a crucial factor for me, and why I am still looking at a Rodgers and hoping that either an Asensio or a Rashford comes good, because anyone outside of that, like a Marlon, I just can't rely on him after game week 33. After game week 32.
Yeah, 32.
Yeah, I think he probably does start 32, but after that, he's useless to me.
I think he gets 60 minutes. He does. 62 minutes is the most he's got all year.
Yeah.
And I think that it's not a fit. I don't know whether it's a fitness thing or whether it's just that the depth that Villa have got. But I mean, if there is a game where he's going to get more than 60 minutes, it's probably this one. But during the double game week in 33, what are you expecting from him? Like, you're expecting probably maybe 160-minute, 130 minutes, or 90 minutes. I mean, I think the 150 minutes over 3 games, that'll be all right. And then ship him out eventually. But there are other options on the table if we're kind of sticking to midfield punts, I guess, which are out there. I suppose that, the biggest one is probably Cole Palmer. So if you don't own him, but the Ipswich up next, I think that it wasn't rotation for Legia. And I did see that was kind of going around circles. Maresca said that they were really tired after Spurs, and James on Planet made a very good point, as he always does, that despite what you might think of Spurs, they are a very kind of tiring team to play against, and no doubt a tiring team to watch for their fans as well, but a very tiring team to play against.
All action, yeah.
And I think that it's very unlikely that he's going to be rested again. So I think that maybe I put Marlon on here just for the lulz, really. But if you do have the wherewithal to bring Palmer back for this week, potentially, I think that he probably would be kind of maybe top of your list. Even though, yes, okay, he's not exactly covered himself in glory recently. It is Ipswich, who have not again covered themselves in glory for this season thus far. So maybe Sam, he's kind of option number 1, second for XGC this year behind your veritable Saints.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get to a Palmer, obviously won't be easy for a lot of managers to get there if they don't already, especially considering the alternatives in that position are largely Saka and Salah. You're not getting rid of Salah ahead of, is it West Ham this week? Yeah, home, and then Leicester next week. And Saka is primed for the double game week in 33. So, yeah, I think the only option that you could look at selling for those of you with him, including yourself, Tom, would be a Foden potentially, because you can get up to a Palmer pretty easily from Foden. But yeah, if you can get there, fantastic. The fixture's great. He looks like he's had his little rest. And I'm very optimistic still that Ipswich at home is going to finally give me good reason to having owned Palmer for the last 2 weeks on the wild card, because I'd really, really like to be proven right on that one. And I'm running out of time. It needs to be now. Yeah, and he's getting sold in game week 33 for sure.
Yeah, and if you can't afford Palmer, I suppose, with the rest of the Chelsea mids not particularly firing. I mean, Enzo probably is okay. 4.7, the player that you could feasibly stick first bench for the rest of the year as well.
I like
if you aren't bench boosting him 33, who's kind of all right. So Fulham, I think it is in 33.
Yeah,
and the rest
it's okay. It's not great, but fine.
And the rest of the year is pretty poor after Everton and 34 for them. So yeah, it is what it is. Continuing on the playing promoted teams line of thought, we move obviously easily on to Brighton, who it's fair to say have slightly fallen off recently after really good sort of, I think Barry Glendenning on the Garden Football Weekly I was listening to earlier on when I was blowing up balloons was saying they had a really good 3/4 of the season, but it does kind of seem like they're disintegrating a little bit. But Leicester are absolutely abject, and the likes of the stick in the midfield. We'll move on to other areas in a minute, but sticking to the midfield, your man Minte, Mitoma, these are individuals who potentially you could be looking at for this week. They're players that I'm looking at for this week, that's for sure, because I've got it depends so much on what happens tomorrow with the Villa guys. I mean, I don't think I'm going to be touching Rodgers, because I think I've got to just go against that, to be honest, even though his effective ownership has gone down. But I need a player who's going to be starting this week for the bench boost. And I think probably I'd be looking at if I can't identify an Aston Villa player, and I think I'm gonna as a Palmer owner be maybe turning to I've got an outside the box option I'm going to mention in a minute, Sam, but I'm going to be turning to probably my man Matoma or Minte as potential options for the week ahead. Now, what do you think about these guys? I think there are so many midfielders for Brighton, aren't there? That it does kind of worry anybody a little bit in terms of who you pick up, though.
Yeah, I like Matoma and Minte. I think Minte, for me, as much as I love him as a player, has just been blowing too hot and cold and not been getting reliable enough minutes for me to want to own him across game weeks. If it's a 1 week punt, it might work out, but even then, there's no guarantee he starts, unfortunately. And I think Matoma just provides that safety net. It's 6.5 million. You're paying the extra 1.5, but you are almost certain that he starts in game week 32 in a great fixture. And then if you needed to have him in game week 33 and start him on a bench boost or not, then Brentford away from home also isn't too bad either. If you don't have a free hit left, he's also great in 34 as well at home to West Ham. So multi-purpose on the Brighton boys. But yeah, they have been, as a team, hit and miss at times this season. It looks like they're going on one of their little barren spells at the moment. I'm just hoping that they're able to continue Leicester's goalless run, because I've got Verbruggen at the back. You've got Dunk. So we're both hoping for the same thing there. But I've just got this bad nagging feeling in the back of my mind that it's just one of those fixtures I can see Leicester getting something or getting at least a goal out of it and ruining everyone's bench boost.
Vardy in it. It's just what's going to happen, isn't it?
So Vardy, yeah. I'm interested to hear what your differential one is, though.
I mean, it's not really a particular player. It is reading the tea leaves and trying to figure out exactly what Liverpool you might want to go for. Just because West Ham at home, I think West Ham they've been done for a long time this year. I mean, it is Potter just tweaking around the system and trying to figure out exactly what he likes for the rest of the year. West Ham and Leicester in 33. If you are kind of just playing bench boost in 33, Leicester away is not the worst fixture in the world, and they've got no sort of fixture prpressure behind them, and they've got Spurs in 34. It's just trying to read the tea leaves and figure out who other than Salah is going to be playing. You've probably got Szoboszlai, but he got taken off for 45 minutes against Southampton. They get 54 minutes against Fulham. You got Diaz, who only came on as a sub against Fulham, although that might have been a bit of a rest. Jota started the last two. I was looking at that and thinking, that could be good. Liverpool have had a bit of a downturn in form. We know that. But at the end of the day, they do kind of now play three defences who could be doing better, to put it politely, over the next 3 game weeks. So I don't know. I was kind of thinking them as one of their players as a rogue shout, and probably taking a gamble on one of Diaz or Jota, maybe Diaz, and just gambling that the midweek was a rest. Sorry, the weekend was a rest after him, but he played midweek. Came back from international duty, of course, and played 85 minutes versus Everton. So maybe it was just a capacity thing. But yeah, I mean, there's so much competition for positions there. With Gakpo, of course, able to play up front or alongside, and obviously Darwin Nunez is still hanging around. For not much longer, but he's still hanging around. That's kind of the wild card. But I don't have a particular player that I could point the finger at and say this one's definitely the one I'll be bringing in. Sam, if you had a Mac 10 from a couple of years ago at Brighton, then maybe I'm thinking, yeah, definitely. But maybe a punt on Diaz, something like that. But it's not filling me with too much confidence. I just can't seem to come to a preference here. If you see what I mean. I got to make a midfield transfer, but I've absolutely no idea who that transfer is going to be at the moment. A lot of it does depend on the information that you may well have received by the time you listen to this, though, if you don't listen to it before tomorrow evening.
Yeah, maybe it's my biases affecting me. I've just got a great long-standing relationship with this man, but I can't get round Rashford. I think if you can get to Rashford, if he doesn't start against PSG, I love that. I absolutely love that. I think it's unlikely both him and Asensio start, against PSG. I think I was messaging you a couple of days ago that would be a very attacking move from Emery to start both of them. I just have a gut feeling one of them gets benched. I think it'll be Rashford, but who knows? It could go the other way. And whichever one does get benched, I think the alternative, whichever one does get benched, I think that one will be a good option for Southampton. And then arguably also, if you run the logic through, that they probably then won't start the second PSG game either, given that Emery's probably kind of put his flag down and said, these are my preferred 11 to play PSG, then you'd also think that maybe they get good minutes in the double as well. So I think if you can do that, and if you're brave enough to back them expected minutes, then I would probably be going with a Rashford or an Asensio. But
certainly,
safe options probably Matoma, as boring as that sounds.
Yeah, he got subbed early though, right? But yeah, he probably is. I mean, I maybe I just quite like taking a bit of a punt on a player like a Marlon this week. I mean, why not? It's a freebie, literally. It's a free transfer. But yeah, I think a lot of it's going to be kind of related to information we'll get. I do quite like the idea of kind of bringing in a Diaz or something like that. You know, we're going to have no idea what the team's going to be, and I think we're really relying on minutes this week, and then next week, kind of you can figure out again. Elsewhere in defence, I've got Milenkovic on this. I've really picked him up. The top of many fixture tickers till the end of the season. If you're looking to buy a defender, still kind of thinking of shipping out Gabriel. I'm not the only one who had this idea. Worth mentioning. So Gabriel's third most transferred out, 250,000 transfers out. People picking up Munoz, and Milenkovic fifth for transfers in, 132,000, 163 grand in for Munoz. I think that's absolutely fine, isn't it? Really, they played 5 at the back this against Villa in what was a very end-to-end game. I don't know if you saw the highlights, Sam, but that game.
I watched it. Oh
wow, that game must have been great fun to watch.
Yeah.
But Marino is it? No, who is it? Marino. Who's that? Who's that guy?
Moreno.
Who's it? But Moreno. That's it. Who's it?
Alex Moreno. Yeah.
So he's now able to play again. So I think they're going to revert back to the back four: Moreno left and Neco on the right. But Milenkovic, I think it's Honk was telling me on Blue Sky, made a really good point. So I was saying, well, don't know who to choose between Milenkovic, Murillo, and Neco Williams, and he made a really good point. I assume it's a he. They said that Milenkovic, you need to think about him as basically being a premium defender who's 1 million cheap, because of the capacity for Forest to keep clean sheets in his SGI. Like, he's basically Saliba 1 million cheaper, or Gabriel 1 million cheaper, which I think makes a lot of sense, to be honest, with the ball strikers they've got in the likes of Gibbs White taking corners. So it kind of was a bit of a no-brainer, especially because Milenkovic was rising, to bring him in for an injured Gabriel. But I think that one of the Forest players, depending on what you can price in, Neco is 4.4 and still decent for anything that you can get. Any of those are good, and I think that Everton game is now against us, Sam. The penalty was the only way they were scoring. I think I was saying on the Slack anyway, that the only way they're scoring is a penalty, and Julie and Dye got one. But the rest of the year, they've got such good fixtures, Forest, that you wouldn't be surprised with the final few, especially because they're shorn of Wood, maybe Elanga now or Nii, that there's going to be a lot more focus on that defence staying tight, and they'll go over the line, I think, comfortably.
Yeah, I think they will, and they've done enough this season to deserve it too. I think the defence has been where they've kind of earned their keep for the most of the year, and they've taken their chances where possible. I think Elanga's a doubt, but he should be okay. Wood, I don't think is too far away, but we'll have to wait and see. I think by the time we look at them again after the free hit in 34, for a lot of us, most of these players will be back as well. So fingers crossed that we'll have some other Forest options to look at for the last 4 game weeks. In the meantime, though, the defence is the interesting one. And honestly, looking at the data, there's not much splitting Milenkovic and Williams in terms of XG per 90. It's only, I think, 0.1 in it, or 0.01 in it. It's actually very close, which surprised me, because they get their XG in a very different way. Williams, obviously, from open play, whereas Milenkovic is largely from those set pieces. And I do tend to agree with you, Tom, and this is why I've got Milenkovic as well, that he just has that, like, aura about him from set pieces, that the ball just kind of he's got like a magnet attached to him, and the ball just finds its way to him in the box somehow. And it just, every single corner, every single free kick, it just seems to somehow get to him. So I like owning him. I do think that there is a goal coming at some point from him, but Williams isn't a million miles away either. So if you don't have the money and you need to save that extra 0.4, 0.5, maybe even 0.6 now, or 0.7. I've completely lost track of what Milenkovic is. I think he might be 5.1. 5.1. So 0.7 million could go quite a long way, actually. So yeah, I mean, I don't mind it as a cheaper option at all. But again, that this is probably your fourth defender at the moment, with the fifth being like a dunk or a 4.5 somewhere. So yeah, get the defender you want. Don't just compromise for the sake of it.
I do think that Milenkovic, Gvardiol, and Arsenal defenders probably your back line for the rest of the year. Almost Munoz's fixtures do stiffen significantly after 33. Well, even in fact, they're probably stiffen right now. To be honest, I'm just saying that because they've got double. But Munoz and Gvardiol both are equal for actually this year, around kind of the six. They're in the 60s, and then Milenkovic is just behind them, 3.6 compared to 4.2. So it's not a million miles away. Munoz and Gvardiol have got more consistent per 90. But yeah, absolutely. I think he's just well worth it. If not, I suppose you've got Estepinian, Dunk. Then if you're making goalkeeper transfer this week, I'm not sure why you would be, but say you've decided, hey, you know what, I don't want Areola. I've got some money in the bank, and I want to bench boost this week. You go to Verbruggen, but Estepinian, obviously a bit of a servant of old, is another player that you could potentially bring in. One of those who does kind of end up in ridiculous positions every now and again, a bit like Munoz does at Palace. But yeah, a few options kind of out there. And I was thinking, is there any kind of space here for Wolves just as an outside shout with Cunha back? Spurs again, as I mentioned earlier on, with owning Jose Sarr. Spurs going to have no interest in this game, fully focused on Frankfurt. But that's really kind of, there's no midfielders whatsoever you could be looking at. Cunha or Larson, but if you don't have the kind of the regulation front three of Matessa, Isaac, Marmoush, do you even FPL at this point? So I don't think you'll be looking at any of them until game week 34, 35. So yeah, it really is like, do I want Agba to push Pineapple Shake the tree and go into my back line at 4.0? That's probably the only kind of thing that I could possibly be saying for them. Assistant manager. So I suppose I have seen a few kind of people kind of question whether we'd be looking at Glasner still, and with the injury with Lacroix potentially having a concussion. We don't really know what's going on there with that. Obviously, keep an eye on that. Chris Richards will be back, who's kind of the other player in that back line. And also, Gahey missing one out of the two games. So, are you still okay on Gazner? Would you lean to Eddie Howe? That's kind of a question which is kind of afflicting a few people, especially if you went with, I don't know. I know a lot of people kind of went Howe, just thinking, yeah, they'll beat Leicester. Got a nice kind of a handsome return of, I think it's 11 points out of that. So you might as well kind of keep it on him for now. For Man United and Crystal Palace, no bonus, but you're looking at 20 points. Thank you very much. Take it home. But for those who are kind of targeting Glasner, don't have enough money. Would you be worried by those defensive injuries, Sam? Because Man City in particular, their defense is hardly kind of Fort Knox, and Newcastle in the other kind of game as well this week. They're not the best games in the world, are they? But potentially kind of over the next 4, 3 of which qualify for table bonus, you should be looking at and thinking, hey, you know what? All I'll need is 1 or 2 of them to come off, and suddenly, I'm 40 points to the good.
Yeah, again, I think you're just playing the odds there, and you're hoping that one of those games, possibly 2, pays off. And okay, yeah, it doesn't look like an ideal situation for the first game in game week 32 at the least, but I still think Glasner is a good one to be betting on. You've got table bonus to apply to a lot of them, which does make a big difference, as we can attest to, Tom. And if you can nail even 1 or 2 of those, then that could be more successful than a Howe, even with a win and a draw. So I think I would probably still veer towards Glasner overall, but I understand the appeal to Eddie Howe. I just think the other factor to consider here is how important are the other three potential options from either team. I think if you're looking at Glasner, you do have a clear three. You've got Mateta, you've got Eze/Sarr, and you've got Munoz, potentially even a Dean Henderson. But I think you could probably get on board with getting rid of one of the defensive options there, maybe less so Mateta, Sarr, or Eze. But at the back, because there's a lacking the potential for clean sheets over the next 2 game weeks, you might be able to get on board with that or just miss them altogether. Whereas with Newcastle, 2 home fixtures in the double game week this week against Man United and Crystal Palace, you are quite liking the chances of goals and the potential for at least 1 clean sheet in there. So it's harder, I think, to go without that third Newcastle player. Isak just obviously picks himself. Murphy's been in great form and is great value for money. And then the defenders aren't looking too shabby either. Livramento and Burn both at 4.5. I think I could just about get on board with losing a Crystal Palace or going without a third Crystal Palace player. Whereas with Newcastle, I'm not sure whether I'd be happy getting rid of even like a Livramento or a Burn at this point in time. I'd probably want them all.
I don't know, man. I'd probably go the other way because I'd be thinking,
really?
How could get you 20 points? Could Livramento get you that?
How can get you 20 points as a maximum? He's not got table bonus, whereas Glasner can get you like 40.
He doesn't. He could get you that, but I think the odds of Howe getting 20 points are higher than the odds of Glasner getting you 40 points. Whereas like Munoz could, I don't know, score in one game and get appearance in the other, so he'd get 10 versus Glasner getting nothing. So I think it could work out that Howe is probably the surer thing, I suppose, in terms of that. If you look at Howe and Newcastle, I think that he'd outscore the defender more than likely, unless you really need like Livramento to score a brace in both games to match Howe getting 20, right? No, that's not true. Just getting an assist in both games and a clean sheet to outscore Howe. So I don't know. I'd be kind of tempted to go for the sure thing on Howe over Glasner at the moment, just because those games are pretty difficult, both of them. Albeit Palace are Man City's bogey team, but I mean, throw in the fact that they are going to have to be managing minutes because they've got 4 games in not very long. I think that I'd be kind of betting. I'm not saying I'd be betting against them kind of player wise, but if it's the assistant manager, which I do think is probably one of the premier chip for gaining those extra points, I would be kind of tempted more to just shove it on the Howe and just kind of forget about it for this week at least, and then kind of see what happens next week with Glasner. Just because I don't know, I just don't. I see. All the players that we've got Munoz in because he gives you attacking returns. So go and get the attacking returns guitar. Sarr and Mateta or as a self-explanatory, but on paper, take the names away. Look at those fixtures and think, oh god, that's awful. Look at Newcastle, especially with United, who are in the Spurs bracket of probably not caring at all about that game, really. Then I think that probably I'd be looking at if I was in a position where I've got 3 Newcastle, 3 Palace, I needed to sell one for my assistant manager, I probably would be selling the Newcastle player, frankly, over the Palace player, because I think that there's more kind of certainty, because that's what you want with the assistant manager, right? You want that not certainty as such, but you want the best chance of getting points out of it. I think Howe does kind of offer that. Then again, we said that about Arteta versus West Ham, didn't we? And he came away with 0. Yeah. So yeah, these things happen. But it's not Glasner versus Fulham, I don't think, for Man City and Newcastle. Although I don't doubt they'll score goals and be competitive in those games.
Yeah, I guess it's basically a head versus heart thing, and I think the potential difference between a Glasner versus a third Crystal Palace player could be bigger in terms of upside than a Howe versus like a Livramento or a Burn. But that's, again, it's by the by. I think it's pretty tight. And I think it largely depends on your attitude to risk at this point. If you're chasing, I would probably advise going for Glasner over an Eddie Howe, because you've got the upside potential to regain the ranks and regain the points. Whereas, yeah, if you're fairly comfortable with your rank and you just want to consolidate a little bit, then Eddie Howe probably is the steady Eddie, and probably the one that you can get away with just getting a few points from.
Yeah. Well, There's the situation in front of you. Sword versus shield. I'd be tempted to take the old shield there. Right, bold claim, Sam. Massive news.
We got
there.
a point.
Woohoo!
Up
There we
to
go.
3-all.
Back in the
Finally.
saddle, baby.
Unbelievable.
So yeah, I mean, obviously there were a few things which were going not very well this week. I was trying to raise your spirits during the course of the week.
Wasn't happening.
With Arsenal drop points for 7. It's like, Sam, we're halfway there, and you're like, okay.
Yeah. I was so switched off. I was looking down the barrel of a massive red arrow at that point, and someone I owned I think Palmer had been benched and come on for a 1-pointer at that point or something. I was just like, it's just not going my way. But it got a little bit better. So I'm in a better mood now. Liverpool also proved my bold claim to be correct. So Arsenal dropped points and then Liverpool also dropped points. So that is a bold claim for me. Finally comes in. We're up to a hit rate of 18% and it is 3-all going into the back few game weeks of the season, Tom.
Oh, very exciting, isn't it? I went for 5+ goals in Spurs versus Saints, and I was very, very close to it. I mean, you guys had 3 big chances, I think it was. I saw on the highlights, and it's just like, oh my goodness, I was so close here. Your prophecy that Saints can score a goal was completely correct. I was just expecting. Oh, it's so close to the 4. So close. I even went as far as in my predictions league betting 4-1 on that one. So yeah,
you would have been very. The fact that Spurs didn't score 4 or 5 in the first half alone was kind of laughable.
That was exactly it. It was just agonising from this perspective and also from the predictions perspective to witness that. But hey, you never win anything by getting close in Vegas, do you?
I suppose not. Although that would be great to hear if that was a thing. But no, unfortunately not. However, I thought I'd have some fun because I'm on a hot streak all of a sudden of 1 in a row. So I'm really going for it. I'm saying, you know what? Screw it. Southampton are going to beat Villa because why not? And that, if that's not a bold claim, I do not know what is. I'm kind of punting on the idea that Villa would be tired from PSG. I don't think this is going to come true, by the way. I'd still heavily target Aston Villa against Southampton, as I mentioned earlier on in the pod. But again, it's bold for a reason. And would it be the craziest thing in the world if we pulled it off? Actually, yeah, it probably would. But we'll go with it anyway. Southampton to beat Villa.
Galvanized by the
galvanized.
Grow some wings. Mine is the standard single game weeker top scores of the week. Unfortunately, I can't have this in 2 weeks in a row, as per
I was
the
going to go for
bylaws
this
that we just came up with earlier last year, I think it was. I mean, who says no to Mo Salah or Cole Palmer scoring a hat trick this week, and then the rest of the players struggling to match that? I mean, it's more than likely this week that you end up with something. Probably going to be Danny Welbeck or something, isn't it? Getting it like 3 goals and assists versus Leicester.
Justin Kluivert, please.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, it's going to be. It's going. I think that this week is primed for something like that happening. It's probably going to be Semenyo, isn't it? No, your luck this year.
Yeah, no, it actually will be. Either Semenyo or João Pedro are about to go ballistic. Please, buy them.
3 penalties for João Pedro, and also Semenyo just has one of those days where everything he hits goes in. But yeah, double single game weeker to top the game week. I think that's probably bold enough for this time round.
Yeah, it's one I like as well. I can see it happening.
You can have it next week. I can't do it again.
True. Yeah. I could go for it next week. Let's see how it pans out this week, though. It might not be fun enough if this one comes through.
Imagine if we get another one. I think our hit rate will go to 19-20%. That's 1 in 5. That's very good. That's
absolutely giddy.
That's better than Darwin Nunez levels of strike rate. Right.
Yeah,
okay.
Right. Best captain, Tom. Is it one word?
Yeah, I think so. This is Zach.
Yeah.
I can't at this moment see, unless you forget to change your captain if you've left it on Salah for a long time, and indeed you're probably not playing FPL anymore, where else you possibly go this week, which is probably something that lends itself to the triple captaincy a little bit if you are manoeuvred to do so, because that's probably the only way you can make gains this week. He was over 100%. Wasn't he the week just gone? 119, 120 for our OR. And I think that in the top 10K, he actually did hit around 130, 140%. So I think the triple captain is going to be the way that you're going to be making serious gains this week. At our level, you're going to be looking at probably Salah still being high just due to lots of players around the level not playing anymore. So I think you're still going to kind of have a slightly impactful captain. I think you probably kind of 150, 160%, which is okay, given we've had a few weeks where Salah was 198%, something ridiculous like that, just because the entire flipping game captained him. So, but I think the triple captain this week, if you are set up that way, I'm pretty envious, to be honest, because I think that is actually quite a decent call, given the fact that, as I said earlier, they've got 2 good fixtures, one against United, who are going to be completely focused on the Europa League, another against Palace, who are probably going to be managing their resources. But I fail to see, Sam, where else she could possibly be going. Mateta again subbed off a little bit early against Brighton. Potentially, you could be looking at that if you wanted to go against the grain. There's always Jacob Murphy, isn't there?
Yeah, so those again will be the 2 obvious alternatives for a lot of people. I think to stick up for Mateta a little bit, he scored a great goal against Brighton, looked a little bit sharper, and his replacement sub, Nketiah, got sent off. So he should get very good minutes in at least the first game of the double. And then you'd think that, again, he probably gets 70 odd in the second. So he might not be a terrible shout, but I think the fixtures dictate that Isak is ahead there. Murphy, I quite like, because, again, extra point for the goal, and he's looked in great form recently. In fact, I think since December, he's like 3rd in the league for goal contributions behind Isak and Salah. So in great form. However, his minutes usually end at around 70 odd every single week, almost like clockwork. He rarely gets 90 minutes. So I think it's quite hard to say that they are outright better options than Isak. That's not to say they can't beat him, though. So if you are chasing, you do want to go differential. I don't think either of them are awful. I just think that Isak is the standout best shout. It is something I'm not like strongly considering it, but it is an opportunity. I'm wondering if I think about taking it. 325k, a risk I could take is maybe punting against Isak and going for a Murphy or a Mateta in the hopes that the non-injury that Isak doesn't or does seem to have at the moment, that's plaguing him a little bit, flares up a little bit and maybe he gets reduced minutes in the double. That would be the chance that you take, I think. But the Eddie Howe quotes after the game suggest to me that he seems absolutely fine. And even in game week 31, it was mainly precautionary and that he doesn't expect it to be an issue moving forward. So even if you were hoping that the minutes would be reduced against Man United, Crystal Palace, even that's looking unlikely now. So it's quite hard to build an argument for anyone else strongly, but it's not to say it can't happen that he gets beaten. So, you know, it's not crazy to go for someone else. It's just that Isak is the standout shout.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so on to what we're planning for the week ahead. There you are, 1 transfer to make.
Yep.
And so the bench boost plan, I suppose, is still in motion. You've got Eva Bruggen, as you said earlier on, which is oddly perhaps what this whole turns on.
Yeah, I suppose it does, really. I mean, I would have picked a completely different keeper if I was on bench boost 33, and because of the difference in fixture quality between the 2 game weeks, yeah, it does reduce the appeal of a 33 bench boost. So yeah, full steam ahead at the moment. I've got almost a full playing 15. Raya and Saliba at home to Brentford in my starting 11. Then you've got the 2 triple ups of Newcastle and Palace. Munoz, Livramento, Sarr, Murphy, Isak, Mateta. Captaincy on Isak, of course, at the moment. And then rounding off my 11 is Palmer, Salah and Marmoush, all with good home fixtures, all on penalties, you would think, and all should get good minutes. Happy with all of them. Bench boosting at the moment consists of Verbruggen at home to Leicester, who haven't scored in 7 or 8 game weeks. Obviously, cue the goal now. Milenkovic at home to Everton, Gvardiol at home to Palace, and then Kluivert currently at home to Fulham with a flag on him at about 50%. Now, that is the question mark. I've got 1 free transfer to use. It looks like Raya and Saliba have gotten through their Champions League game unscathed. So I'm really just hoping no injuries from training this week now. I'm also kind of hoping that Kluivert is fit because I really like him as an option this week. Not many people have him anymore. He's on penalties. He's had a little break. I think if he can play, I'd love to roll the transfer and then have a more informed decision on which Villa asset I bring in next game week, because I also then wouldn't need to sell Cliver at all. I could hold on to him for the back few games in the season, and I could earn a little bit of money by downgrading Palmer to Saka, giving me enough to upgrade Murphy, who I don't have much use for after game week 33, or after this game week, 32. And that can very, very easily be a Rodgers at that point in time. So I would prefer to roll the transfer, but I'm ready and primed to move Cliver on to an Asensio, a Rodgers, maybe even a Brighton boy. Unfortunately, I've been priced out of Rashford, which is my bombshell. I'm very unhappy about that because I would love Rashford, unless I find a -4 somewhere I like, but I just can't find one.
I can't see one.
I really can't. I'm not willing to downgrade any of the single game weekers that I've currently got. So, and especially not for a -4. So, yeah, I think it's either a roll if Clivert's fit, or if he's a significant doubt, it's probably the Villa boy that I'm most convinced starts the game.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. No, that's very good. So I think that's absolutely fine for
Needs to be a big green. Needs to be a big week.
We know what happens. I'm going into it expecting a fail. I think that's going to be that's the best way to mentally manage all these situations. So, as for me, similar team to you, in a shock to everybody involved. The key differences are what's on the bench. So Jose Sarr versus Spurs. I mean, whatever. I'm just hoping that Spurs can be so eye off the ball versus Frankfurt. That's a 1-0 Wolves, and Jose Sarr gets a few saves from a few limp Werner attempts.
That'd be a legendary call if you get that right. That would be a really good one.
It was more just because I didn't have 4.5. That's literally the only reason. I didn't choose Sarr because I wanted him. It was because I had the choice between Flecken, who's away at Arsenal, Ramsdale, Hermanson, speaks for themselves, and Areola away at Liverpool. So Sarr was like the obvious option of those on the list. Even like Palmer at Ipswich is 4.5, so there's nowhere I could have possibly gone except for Sarr. So it's not a legendary call, it's a default call, but I will take it if it does turn out to be a great pick. So I've got him on the bench for my bench boost, got Dunk on the bench for my bench boost, and then I've got Guardiol, who can't get in the team basically if I didn't bench boost this week, just because I've got Livramento, Milenkovic versus Everton. That's a nailed on 0-0. Say about now, and Betis can score a brace, isn't he? But to me, that's a nailed on 0-0. And then Munoz obviously isn't coming off the pitch. And so I've got Foden, and I'm in the same situation as you, really, except I can afford Rashford effectively. And what the hell I do with that position, I've got no idea. I've got absolutely no clue what I'm going to do with that move. It'd be very nice if I could have a player who could play 32 and 33. There, I'm resigned to taking a hit in 33 just because I've got to take out Palmer. I'll probably want to take out Livramento for an Arsenal defender that week. But if I do get in a player this week who is literally a 1 week punt like a Matoma or something, then the door is still open to me to buy in an Arsenal midfielder potentially alongside the rest of my midfield. So maybe I get Marino or maybe I get Rice. So yeah, but that's still kind of something which is in my thoughts. I don't want to limit myself potentially. If next week I think, you know what, a sword move might be to go for the double Arsenal midfield, the double Arsenal attack effectively, and not buy a Saliba, who is obviously, we need a target from those set pieces. So maybe it is Saliba now. I think Kivior is still playing along. So yeah, but I think it'd have to be Saliba if I was going for an Arsenal defender. Does seem sensible given the fact that I think most people will have Raya and Saliba next week, and maybe if I'm in a competition next week, I might want to just kind of do something which is along the lines of a bit more kind of defensive. But I do like kind of going for double Arsenal attack, so maybe it does lend itself to a Matoma, does lend itself to a Minte this week, but yeah, or even a Diaz, as I said earlier on. But I do really, really like whatever, if as you kind of are kind of foreseeing, we don't see an Asensio or a Rashford on the pitch tomorrow night, then I think that's a decision made, and it's a very, very easy decision for me to make as well. So yeah, it's just that final piece of the piece of the puzzle, really. The rest of it's pretty well set. and we'll just need to see how it goes. So never bench boosted in a single game week. I don't think in all my time playing FPL, or bench boosted single game weekers in all my time playing FPL. So my expectation is, well, the minimum threshold for me to consider success is 10. If it gets 8 or 9, I'm going to be like, meh, that's a bit rubbish. Need a big week. Yeah, it is going to be what it's going to be at the end of the day. But yeah, I'm in a decent position in striking distance now with the top 100k. I think it's like kind of 25, 26 points, and hopefully that's going to be doable.
Yeah, you'll get there. I have faith, and I think 10 points on a bench boost from you, you'll cover that off easily. I'm looking more towards 20 for you. I think you can nail that. So yeah, I know you're a pessimist, so I know you won't say that yourself, but I back you. I think you'll have a good week. So yeah, fingers crossed. This time next week, we'll be looking at a rank with 5 figures rather than 6 for you, Tom.
Yeah, I very much doubt that, but we'll see.
We'll see. Fingers crossed for you though, mate. We'll get there. Right, I think that's probably it for today. We've got some fantastic Champions League highlights to go catch up on, haven't we, Tom? And we're told some excellent free kicks. And I do wonder if Saka's being brought off early with an injury or whether it's all okay. On SofaScore, it looked like it was an injury, but
I think he was tired. In the chat. He was tired. I think he was brought off a bit later on with Rice as well. Like he was limping earlier on, but he played another 10-15 minutes, so probably just tired. But
he'll be all right.
I would not expect him at all to be playing Brentford. So I'd be shocked if he did play that.
Oh, okay, interesting. I was going to say he'll get 45 against Brentford, and then that'll cover him off.
He won't start Brentford, I should probably say.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder what people's strategy would be there with Saka. But yeah, luckily for both of us, we don't have to worry about that just yet. And I think we'll both be buying in game week 33, hopefully once they've dispatched Real Madrid, which by the looks of it, looks more likely now all of a sudden, which I wasn't expecting. Anyway,
don't be silly, Sam. We'll bottle it. We'll go to Madrid, lose 4-0, or we'll come up against Emery after he beats PSG, and then we'll lose kind of 2-1 to Villa narrowly.
It's got X narrative all over it, hasn't it?
On. Being an Arsenal fan is the same as being an England fan. I know, tiny violin, given what you're going through as
I was going to say. Yeah. Oh, God. Who's that flag in the background I've got? Oh, yeah.
Cover it quickly.
Yeah. Oh, my. Yeah. Anyway, good. Fingers crossed. You've got some Champions League highlights to go catch up on, I'm sure, Tom. But it's been a pleasure as always. And thank you for joining us. If you have missed out on the Champions League tie alongside us, that we've really appreciated it. If you're listening along tomorrow, thank you so much as well for that. In the meantime, we have been Who Got the Assist. If you could follow us on our social channels, it's Blue Sky, WGTA or FPL Pricey on there, WGTA_FPL or FPL Pricey on X, Twitter, and on Instagram or Threads, it's WGTA.FPL, FPL Pricey on there as well. If you did enjoy the pod, we'd really appreciate it if you could give us a follow, but also if you could leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening to us, or if you're watching along on YouTube, leave a like, hit subscribe. It will do us the world of good. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for listening and watching and do all those things. We hope this you think about doubles ahead. No, these are all functional pods at the moment, and this is really the start of a trilogy, with next pod being a 33 double preview and 34 being a probable free hit one. We promise from 35 we'll return to more regularly scheduled, deeper thought programming, starting with X Motivation, which we are looking forward to getting into. Good show our range, I suppose, Sam. Anyway, have a good week. Keep your eye on the Champions League, and we'll speak to you very soon. See you next Thursday.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.